Welcome to ArtBeat, Canada's Art Pulse. I'm your host, Katie. Today, we're joined by Victoria Sequeira, a visionary artist whose work explores the profound influence of women in her life, themes of sexuality, duality, and the pursuit of self-love and understanding. Victoria shares insights on transforming intangible feelings into captivating visual forms and the balance between public perception and personal expression. As she navigates the intricacies of her career, Victoria also offers a glimpse into her upcoming shows in Brooklyn and Calgary. Stay tuned as we unravel Victoria's journey of exploration, acceptance, and the vibrant impact she aims to make through her art. Victoria, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm very curious about how you weave sexuality and duality into your art. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how these themes have evolved and become integral to your work?
Yeah, well, growing up, I grew up in a family with a lot of women influence in my life. And my dad was basically like the only male influence I had. My grandfather's passed away when I was young. And he was just like the constant, I think. And then I had all of the beautiful women in my life. So my mother, my sister, my aunts, my grandmothers. And I still have my grandmothers to this day. They're still with us. And something that was really prominent growing up was feeling secure in yourself and in your place and in your environment and who you're around. And so I think that really tied into my work subconsciously. And it wasn't until I started doing this on a professional scale that I realized the influence that all of these women in my life have had on my work and my practice. So something as simple as just accepting your body for what it is. At a young age, I realized that was going to be the key to confidence and secureness in life. And growing up as a young girl too is always like really, really tricky. So the sexuality aspect, I think it stemmed from that. I think it stemmed from feeling connected to my body. And with the work that I do, they're very women-esque figures. And I think that a lot of people look at my work and see this ties into the duality aspect, a lot of masculine features or bold features in the imagery and in the figures that I paint. And I love that people can catch on to something like that because of how much feminine influence I've had in my life. It's really important that pull in those masculine aspects as well. And that's not to say that it's women or man based. It's just an energy feeling. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the self-love aspect has been a really, really big theme in my work for the past few years, but that's also where I'm at in my life. I'm in my mid-20s and have been doing this for almost 4 years now. And so it is the self-love phase of life that I'm in. But as I grow up and evolve through my own sexuality and my place in the world, I think that my work will follow suit. And another side of the duality thing too is I think there's nuance to everything in life and there's duality to everything in life. Most of life exists in the gray. And I've challenged a lot of my own thoughts through my process and through my work. What I once thought, I try to shake that up. I look at a lot of my mistakes in life and I try to see where I went wrong and where I went right, and the duality of how mistakes bring us into a better phase of life. There's always the other side of the coin, and I try to make sure that I'm touching on these things when I'm in my sketching process, when I'm coming up and conceptualizing the idea for my next piece. And that's the long-winded answer. Wow. I think that, like sexuality is so personal to each and every individual. And it's, I guess for me in my work, it really is less about sex and more about how I feel in my own body and how connected I feel. So yeah, that definitely is a really big theme in my work. And not to say that it's the only theme, but it bridges everything and ties it all together at the end of the day. And the duality aspect is also very important. Like I said, it's hard to make a blanket statement over something with art. And it's really important that I observe and explore all sides of things through my work. And duality at its core is kind of something that is the common denominator through each piece.
And what does the concept of radical acceptance mean to you in the context of your art? Because you're talking a lot about self-acceptance and self-love. So how does that come through in your pieces?
So I think it's important to mention that although self-acceptance and self-love is a really big theme in my work, I want to make it clear that it's not something like it is a big theme because it's been one of the biggest challenges in my life. So coming to a point where you can radically accept all of the things that were once drivers for stress and anxiety and depression is the most liberating feeling in the world, whether it be with oneself or your past. And I think that trying to find a way to make my work make sense and be true to my story and the stories of the people that I love and are around me is what's of utmost importance to me at the end of the day. It doesn't have to directly correlate to my life, but as long as in a way it feels true and it feels honest, then I think I'm doing my job. And the radical acceptance comes from a place of so much turmoil and finally getting to a place in life where you can realize that I have to move on, or I have to evolve and I have to grow. So I need to say, okay, and I need to process this and absorb this and allow it to be a part of my journey, and then move past this and allow it to be something that guides the rest of my practice or my life, or of who I am and how I process information. I think that in a lot of ways in life, I've tried to convince myself that I've accepted an outcome or accepted who I am. And then later on, we realize with the way that life works, everything ebbs and flows. We're back to that spot. And I thought that for the longest time. And then I just realized that was a part of, that's what life is you work so hard to get to the place that you want to be, and then you fall again. And that song and dance that we seem to do so many times through life is like, what is so beautiful about it? And that gives it substance and that gives it character. And so all of these things, I try so hard to represent in who I am as a person, but also in my work. And I'm not sure I do those feelings justice through my work. I think it's something that I'm like everything else. I'm trying so hard to bring those feelings to life. And that has to be one of the hardest things to translate, is what's inside, and bringing it out onto the canvas or paper and feeling like it is a true representation.
How do you translate these intangible feelings of desire and bewilderment into visual forms in your art?
So that's a great question. I think one of the biggest drivers for me with desire and bewilderment is a sense of curiosity. I think desire and bewilderment come from the unknown a lot of times. And if I can create curiosity in my life or put myself into situations that are maybe a little uncomfortable, then I find that I can create new concept as well. So a lot of this, like the thick of my work happens with pencil and paper when I'm sketching. That's where the excitement starts to brew for a new series or a new piece. And so by creating curiosity, I allow myself to expand what I know I'm good at. And so through travel and through meeting people and not even just meeting people, but really diving into people and getting to know strangers on an intimate level, or doing something that absolutely terrifies me. Could be as simple as getting out of my comfort zone and going on a solo trip. Or it could be, building up the courage to put myself out there with love or to put up boundaries. All of those things eventually create bewilderment, or they can create desire. I think eventually it comes full circle where you learn your lesson or you come to a conclusion on that thing, and then you can create from that sense of knowledge or curiosity. And yeah, it's really exciting being able to sit there and know that what you're about to create could potentially be something you'll be very proud of. And every time I've done that, it's been in a phase of life where I feel unsettled, if that makes sense. And when I'm at my best self, I can create good work, but that's not ever going to be my best work. It's when I desire more, or it's when I desire the unknown and I'm shaken up and confused about where I'm at, that I can create something that feels like it's saying something.
Let's talk about your artistic process for a moment, because you've mentioned sketching and drawing and how that seems to be an initial concept. So how do you go from the sketching and drawing to the final piece? How do you choose what you are going to end up painting?
I think choosing what is going to evolve and live a different life, there's really no equation to it. I think it's like a fire you feel in your chest or in your belly. When I start creating, I do these exercises where I'll sit down with a stack of paper and I'll set a timer for 30 seconds and will force myself to sketch. Every 30 seconds, I come up with a new idea. And it's a really great exercise to push boundaries and to kind of tap into your subconscious a little bit, because when you're on a timer, you're just focused on getting that piece to a semi-completed phase where you can then bridge it into a new idea. When I'm able to sit there and do those exercises, I come up with some ideas I had never thought about before. But then there's also I read this in The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. He talked about this, where you're kind of just struck with the idea out of nowhere. I could be laying in bed, and often this is where a lot of ideas come to me, is where I'm in like the in-between phase of like consciousness and like falling asleep. And it could be something that's like seeing an image, and that I'm like, wow, what a great idea. And then I open my phone and I open like a little sketchbook app that I have, and I like quickly draw it on my phone so I don't lose that idea. Or one time I was in an airplane and I really have no idea how these little zaps of inspiration come to me, but they're very, they're not often. That type of inspiration doesn't happen often, where it just comes out of nowhere. I feel like that's so Raven, where I'm just like, I have a vision. And, anyways, so that is one side of it. But the sketch aspect, when I come out with like a stack of 30 sketches, I'll look through, but I'll always know which one felt the most authentic to me. And I'll pull that out and I will then polish it up, add to it, take away from it, change it how I need it to be. And then it goes onto canvas. It's not so much something I'm looking for specifically But I'm sure things like composition and feeling play a role, but it's that feeling inside of me that tells me that it's going to go somewhere.
How do you know when a piece is finished? How do you decide, or does it decide for itself?
So with the way that I work, it's a little different from the process of that of an abstract artist, someone who works very intuitively with their body. So the way that I work is very planned out. So I start with a sketch and then I move on to brainstorming color palettes that I think would fit the story and the energy of this piece. And then it translates onto canvas. And so when I'm in that planning phase, I already have an idea of where it will end, where it will stop. Whereas with a lot of my peers who are more intuitive with their body and their work, their body influences their work. They don't know where the finish line is. And so they have to check in with themselves quite often and say, okay, now it's ready. Now it's ready, or no, it needs more. And that's something I've noticed over the past few years, just meeting people with different mediums and different styles, is that we all work so differently. So for me, I know the finish line when I start painting. And so that's not always the case. Sometimes I look at something and I'm like, I hate this. This is not ready. And it probably will never be ready. Sometimes I have to scrap work, or sometimes I need to add to it and give it a new life. Those things do happen. But I think usually I'm going into a piece knowing how I want it to look. And so when I'm painting and it's nearing that phase of completion, I feel content. And if I don't feel content, then that brings me into a new phase of brainstorming. And I kind of, not back to square one, but at least I'm in a new box of having to think about how to make this piece something I'll be proud of. But that doesn't always happen either. Sometimes you have to accept the defeat from the canvas.
That needs to be a quote on a t-shirt or a tote bag.
Canvas 1, Vic 0.
I love it. Talking about conceptualizing your work from a vision and drawing to putting it onto the canvas, I'm curious how you navigate the interplay between what I imagine, public perception and your own personal expression of sexuality. How do you figure that out as you're going along, and what does that look like, that internal process of maybe release or acceptance?
I think women in general, we battle a lot in the theme of sexuality. And so I think it's a very hard feat to try to rid yourself of the premonitions and the ideas that you may, or that society may have of women and who we're supposed to amount to. When I'm creating, I try so hard to tap into my soul in a way, and how I feel inside. And that has proven to be, and still is, one of the biggest challenges of creating. As I mentioned earlier, to try to translate yourself onto paper, it feels like next to impossible at times. So trying to take myself and how I know I am and how I know I feel, and how I present myself to the world, or on an energetic level, and creating something that feels suitable to how I want that to be perceived. There's no like translation really for it. I don't even, that's why I said it was such a good question, is because it's something that is hard for me to dissect in a way. But from a societal perspective, I think that a lot of my work is perceived as being feminine but acceptable and still bold and the right balance. And these are just things I've heard at art expos and from clients and stuff like that. But a lot of me wants to push boundaries more. And so it's why I battle with answering this question, is because I don't think that I'm pushing boundaries enough in a lot of cases. And so it's somewhere where I want to end up. I strive to be in that position. And I mean, that ties back to the whole desire and bewilderment. Like I'm currently in a phase, I'm creating a series where I'm just dying to push boundaries. So when you create for yourself, that's all that matters, is that you're doing what feels authentic. But then when you're creating and you're making a career out of it, society and the industry can oftentimes, push you into a bubble. And I wish I could sit here and say I've always been authentic and I've always been true to me. And I think in a lot of ways that's true. But also I want to make sure that I maintain my career and my job and my dream. So I think that I've watered my work down a lot for the viewer or consumer, and for even just social media as a whole, as it's my biggest marketing tool. And I can't say that I've not gone out of that yet, but I'm working on it. So the whole sexuality aspect, I really want to push more boundaries, and I really want to dive deeper into it in a way that maybe isn't palatable for people. Maybe it is, but I haven't been able to explore that just yet.
When do you think you will be able to explore that? Even at what point? Do you have an idea of what will determine this sort of tipping point where you are able to move into expressing yourself how you truly want to express yourself? And is that a fear?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely a fear. I think, to answer the first part of your question, I think I'm in that phase now, which is very exciting. And I think being here, I'm very thankful for it, because I've been able to build up enough in my workload where I'm able to take time to explore what I want. So I'm currently in this phase of testing boundaries and playing with new medium and ideas, and really trying to tap into this part of myself that feels like I'm doing the right thing. But yeah, no, it's very terrifying. It's so scary, because I think that this style of work that I do has been thankfully accepted by a lot of the people that are viewing it, and it feels great to have people share their love and admiration for my work. But to know that those same people might not love what I do is very scary. But that's the name of the game. That's how you evolve. That is how you get better. That is how you become a better person and a better artist, is when you feel like you are living your truth. And I'm very excited for this next year of my work. I think that I'm so naive to what I'm doing right now, which is also
what do you mean?
Because I'm playing with new ideas. I got really comfortable with the style of work that I was doing before. There was a routine for it. And I think now I'm in this phase where it's kind of like I'm starting out again. And that's why like that childlike wonder is so important, is because everything is foreign to you. And so when you start playing with new tools or new ideas or new concepts, and you start understanding why wouldn't I do this rather than why would I do this, then you come up with some of the best work that you have ever made, but also some of the worst work. So it's a double-edged sword that way. So I think being in this phase of ignorance is a lot of fun. I'm playing around with new ideas, storylines. It's great.
I feel like we're just touching the very surface of what you're looking to hope, and maybe drive your art into. Like, how do you envision your art evolving, and what kind of impact do you hope to have with this new direction that you're taking your body of work?
I just want to leave people feeling a little more understood than after seeing my work than before. I know that feeling of sitting in front of a piece and a part of you feels attached or understood and very emotional. Mm-hmm. And that is the only impact I want to have with my work. Whether it be on an individual scale or a community scale or a global scale, I really just want to make some form of positive impact on someone's life. I want them to look at my work and feel like it represents a part of them that they too have a hard time translating. And that's obviously a very big theme here, as I've mentioned so many times. That's something that I have struggled with myself. I would love to be able to give that to any viewer of my work. And it's so rare. It's so rare to find someone that feels moved by what you do. But when you find that person, or they reach out to you and they share their thoughts and their admiration, that is exactly why I'm doing this on a career scale, is that so I can experience more of it. In a way, it's very selfish, but I think also that's how you find your community. That's how you find like-minded individuals. And that is why I'm doing it at the end of the day. I love people. I love being social. I love the community aspect of the arts and of life. And I think no matter where my work evolves to, that theme will follow with it. That is the core of why I'm doing this. So, and I think another thing is I just want my work to represent me, and I want to represent my work. I want people to walk away after engaging with me and feel the same way, feel understood.
I'd like to change topics for a moment, because we were just talking about the commercial aspect of being an artist. I understand the business side of art is often a challenge. And so I'm wondering if you're able to tell us more about, what have been some key learnings for you in managing the logistical and commercial aspects of your career?
This is ongoing. I'm still learning how to do this every single day. I think when you are any entrepreneur will be able to relate to how hard it is to do this on your own. I don't have any assistance or anything of the sort. And I'm still learning every day how to manage this. But some things that I've learned over the past 4 years are that one of the most important things is consistency. You can get as many subscription services and tools and everything that you need, but if you're not consistent, then it is going to be really hard to scale your business. Because at the end of the day, it is absolutely your passion and your dream in life, but it is also now something that you are trying to scale up and create a future with. So you need to be consistent with it. And that trickles and filters down to even like the most simple of things. You need to be consistent with cleaning your brushes. I still struggle with. It's so important to maintain consistency when at the end of the day is still your job. That also, I mentioned finding the right tools. I think that's really important. I think understanding the tax aspect of creating a business is really important. Understanding that your income, depending on how much business you're doing, it would dictate how much tax you're going to pay, right? This is the obvious. We all know this. And yet the government doesn't make it very easy for us to understand the small threads in between that stuff. So I think getting an accountant is really important. Finding accounting tools that will help you is really important, especially if you're not good with numbers and you're not experienced with that side of business. I also think finding friends and people in the community who get it is really important. And when I say get it, I mean they understand the schedule, they understand the dedication, they understand that at the end of the day, this is a big part of your life. I think, I'm sure you can relate to that in a lot of ways too. With your background, community is really important. Just having people that can help uplift you when you're down is really important. And I think I have, my childhood friends, and I have my family friends, and I have my best friends that are removed from the art community in Toronto, and they can help me as much as they're capable of, but no one will get it the way that your art community will get it. So I think that is not only good for the soul, but it's really good for your business as well. And I think from on Instagram, I get a lot of the same questions. And it can get hard and daunting to kind of repeat yourself. But one of the biggest questions I get is like, how do you get followers? How do you market yourself on social media? And I can't sit here and act like I know how to do that, because I genuinely don't. I can tell you that the chunk of my followers just came from a viral reel. It wasn't something I planned or set out to do. It was just something I created that ended up being liked. So that is why everyone says just be yourself, is because when you can tap into what makes you happy and what you like to do, even on a digital scale like that, like-minded individuals will gravitate towards your work, and then it will gain you more followers. It will gain you more business. It will make more sales. There really is no structure to it, at least from there is. Instagram would tell you that there's definitely an algorithm, but the way that I've gone about it is not structured. I don't really use hashtags. I'm probably doing everything you shouldn't, and yet it's working. So I think my advice to people is stop worrying about it. Stop worrying about gaining followers and marketing yourself in a way that would achieve, the most eyes, and just start working on creating content that feels like you and feels like stuff that you would want to see. Because at the end of the day, some of the most successful artists don't have a lot of followers. Like it doesn't equate to success.
Very true.
So,
it does not. You're right.
Yeah. I think people need to remove themselves from that perceived success that is on Instagram.
Yes. That's a very good point, and a very important point, because I think that plays a lot into people's perceptions of themselves and what success is and what success looks like. But like you just mentioned, that is not always the best or clearest indication of success. And it's important I think, like you've been saying, to just really listen to yourself and be authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, a lot of people don't want to hear that either, because the people that are asking these questions, they want some form of guidance, right? And I guess if I'm going to give
a formula.
Right. Yeah. And if I'm going to give anything, it's not even going to be related to like algorithm or how to beat the algorithm. It's going to be, I think high quality content is really important. Having a purpose for what you're sharing is important. And making sure something as simple as your camera lens being clean, that is important if you want to have good content. Those things, I think, seem so small, but if you're consistent with it, it adds up. And even learning how to edit a video, like this age of TikTok and Reels is so consuming, and it takes forever to edit one of these videos. And so taking time to maybe educate yourself on how to do that properly, how to time your video to music. Wow, I probably sound like such an old person saying this. Learning how to do that is important. I had to do that, but God. Anyways, I think that if I'm going to give any form of guidance, it's going to be that making sure your content is beautiful, that it looks, and that's obviously subjective, but it fits you. It fits you as a person and the message you are trying to get across.
Speaking of community, you have a few shows lined up that I'm hoping you can tell us more about. One of them being a group show in Williamsburg, and then you have a solo exhibition in Calgary. So can you tell us more?
Yeah. I'm like smiling ear to ear right now. I can't believe it's so crazy.
I can hear the smile.
Yeah, I have two shows coming up. So the first one is in Calgary. It is at Mara Studio Architects. And the series that I'm working on is exclusively for the Very, Very shop, which is owned by Mara. And how this came about was these two lovely, lovely women, Tara and Megan. They own Mara, and they build some of the most beautiful commercial and residential buildings I've ever seen. Obviously located in Calgary. And they had this amazing idea to open up an in-house shop where they sell, or will be selling, artisanal and bespoke goods for the home. And their mission is to kind of tap into a market that is more unconventional for the consumer, that doesn't want just an overlooked piece of decor in their home. They want everything to be intentional. And so for the launch of their store, I'm doing an exclusive series for them. And it is going to be a really different experience hosting a show in a studio filled with architects and designers and students. It's very foreign to me, and I'm so excited about that. I'm excited to meet people in, a city I've never been to before, but also in an industry I know nothing about. So this series is very much going back to what we said in the beginning of this podcast, is very much tied to womanhood, as March is Women's History Month. And I really wanted to play on that theme, as it's a big driver in my work. And so the show, as of right now, I'm debating on 2 different names for the show. By the time this comes out, it'll definitely already be a title. I can tell you the 2 names. I'm debating between Shapeshift and Sweet Surrender. And so I think we have a winner.
I cannot bluff, Victoria.
That's amazing. Well, no need to do full online. I think we know what this is. But I really wanted this series to represent how beautiful womanhood is. And I think a lot of times we try to explain to people who don't understand what womanhood is, aka men. And
I was just going to say,
yeah. And we try to sit there and dissect these experiences and how vast and deep and emotional the woman experience is. And with this series, I kind of wanted to take an opposite approach to that and it be more for women rather than trying to explain to the world what it is we go through, the challenges we face. I want it to be something we get to revel in. So the shape-shifting aspect is that we take on so many roles and we wear so many hats in life. And yes, it's challenging, of course, but at the end of the day, I think most of us wouldn't trade it for anything. And we are constantly shifting into different phases and evolving. And I think that that's such a beautiful and honorable experience. And so, yeah, the other name that you really love, The Sweet Surrender, is it's significant to us surrendering to these journeys that we face inevitably. And I don't necessarily mean things like womanhood or being a partner, because it's not a one size fits all experience. And I'm speaking on things more like the innate feelings we have as we navigate life. Like our ancestors have spent thousands and thousands of years developing our instincts. And so it's things like that I want to hone in on for this series. And I want these pieces to feel badass. And I want them to feel, I want women to feel a little understood. Like I said, I want people to look at them and feel like someone gets it. So the show in Brooklyn is a group show. And another thing I'm really excited for, as I get to meet so many different artists from around North America. And it's being hosted at a tattoo shop, actually, which these alternative venues are really exciting to me. And it's nice to kind of bring the gallery space into something so unconventional. But the tattoo shop is called Atelier Eva, and they are very well known in Brooklyn. They have 2 locations, and this one is going to be at their Grand Street location on April 25th. And the basis of this and the reason why they're doing it is because once a year, they love to bring artists that they've been admiring together to showcase to their community and their people in Williamsburg, which is such an honor. And honestly, to be able to show my work to, people in New York is one thing, but then to people of other practices in the art industry, like tattooing, is really wicked. I'm really excited for that. And I'm excited to see what it brings me and what it brings the other artists that are a part of this. So yeah, I think it'll be really cool to bridge all of these different art industries together in one space for a night.
And so going from Brooklyn, I want to turn the focus back to Canada, and I would like to hear more about being a Canadian artist, how you perceive the art scene in Canada. How do you see the landscape evolving?
So I feel very passionate about the Canadian art scene. It is one of the most exciting things to be a part of. And like to say that I'm a part of it is such a really, really cool statement. But Canadian artists are just so ambitious. I feel like we have, in a way, something to prove to the world and to ourselves that not a lot of other places have, especially in comparison to the US. And there's a collective understanding that when one of us succeeds, it's a win for everybody, I think. And speaking more so in a local aspect in Toronto, because it's just what I'm most familiar with, I've never seen a place so conducive to helping fellow artists growing and expanding. I read this statistic like sometime last year, and we will probably have to fact check this, but the Toronto Art Council, they did like, I'm almost positive this is correct because I've told so many people about it. But I just thought it was such a crazy, they ran a survey and it basically said that 70% of Torontonians regularly attend or volunteer artistic events in the city, which is an incredibly high number. And
it is.
That alone just goes to show how important the arts are to not only artists, obviously, but the residents in Toronto, like have such a tie to that part of the city. And it is really, it is the heartbeat of Toronto. So, not only do we have incredible galleries that work together amongst themselves, but there's also a common thread between local collectors here too that are wanting to expand their taste in work, invest in work that is maybe more challenging and thought-provoking rather than socially acceptable. So that brings you into collectors. Toronto collectors are investing in pieces that are more political and that are pushing those boundaries. And that is so exciting to see because, we of course know and love the Group of Seven and Works Alike. And I think it's just refreshing to know that people who are buying the work are starting to buy things that feel more aligned to their morals and ethics, rather than something that is just, expensive and that they can put in their house.
Performative, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But, because Canada is rich in culture, our country is rich in culture from around the world, I think that the artists here coming out of it have what it takes to reach global recognition because we grow up with this culture around us. So we're so informed to make art that feels recognizable globally. So it's really exciting. And I think at the end of the day, the arts is one of the biggest pillars that is holding up Toronto specifically. Without it, I think a lot of this city would crumble. It's definitely part of the city's DNA.
Victoria, what's next for you?
I really hope to continue creating work that feels true to the phase of life that I'm in. So I think in the coming years, it's just going to grow and evolve with me through the changing seasons and life's moments. And I can only hope that it will. But for the rest of the year, I will be doing a lot of travel. So I'm really hoping that influences my work as well. And I have, as mentioned, the show in Calgary coming up at Mara Studios with Very, Very on March 14th. And on April 25th, I have the group show with Atelier Eva in Williamsburg. But beyond that, I think I expect from myself to be, like I said, pushing more boundaries and creating work that feels a little bit more true to myself. But I would really love to collaborate with more brands and work on commercial projects that feel aligned with my work in a vision and mission sense. I would love to work with a sustainable fashion company. I would also love to work in film in some way. I'm a really, really big film geek, and I have always wanted to have a hand in that in some way. I'm not really sure how, but I just know that would be something that would feel good to check off of my goal list. And I think other than those really big dreams and stuff that I can work towards, I think what's next is just creating work that feels conducive to a more understood version of myself. So that is going to be ever evolving and probably will never end, but it's something to look forward to.
So Victoria, where can everyone find your work?
So my work can be found on my website, which is victoriasequeira.com. And then also my Instagram page, just at the handle Vic Sequeira. And then the shop, Very, Very, will be hosting the new series that I'm making exclusively for them. And yeah, those are the 3 places where you can see what I'm up to.
Amazing. Well, thank you so very much for being with us today. And we're looking forward to seeing what you're going to do next.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. This was just a pleasure and something I've wanted to do for a while. So it was really nice when you invited me on.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Thanks, Victoria. Thank you for joining us on ArtBeat, where the stories of Canadian art come to life. Follow us on Instagram at ArtBeat Podcast for exclusive content and previews of what's to come. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay updated with our journey through the world of Canadian art. Enjoyed the episode? Leave a review or recommend us to a fellow art enthusiast. Together, let's keep the conversation going and deepen our connection to the diverse world of Canadian art. See you next time.